So this is a video on the part B of the MRCS. I promised this for long, but I haven't done it because between being busy job hunting, trying to transition from job and relocation, I've not been able to make one. But I realize I'm not able to also keep up advising people individually, so probably sending a link will save me a lot of time and also help people better, just as the part A video has. So I did my part A in May. I made a video on my score and my preparation, and I think most people have watched that, and it has helped. I did my part A in Ghana, even though I'm from Nigeria, and I did my part B in February 2023 in London. I passed quite well, 270, I think, 271, something like that. But then I couldn't make a video. I promised, but I couldn't, so I just posted the result. And I'm making one now to be able to guide people. So what I'm hoping to do is to tell you how I think is the best method to prepare, a time range that I think is enough, and also to discuss the resource materials that you can use to prepare. And then of course, eventually the elephant in the room, which is whether you should do a course or not to be able to succeed in passing the exam. So let's dive into it. The part B of the MRCS exam is an OSCE, so clinically structured exam, and you need to pass it, I believe, within 7 years of passing the part A, and you have a maximum of about 4 attempts on the part B. And the college you complete the part B with is a college that will award you your final membership, and then you can go ahead to get your GMC registration if you're a foreign IMG. Of course, this is a mid-residency exam. I think I've explained that before in my previous video, and that means that you also be writing with UK trainees in surgery after their second year. That's when they're expected to write it ordinarily, but you can write it anytime post-medical school. I've made a video on that. So let's talk about the preparation for this OSCE exam. My personal opinion is that the part B is easier. It's an easy exam, way easier than part A. The part A is quite a tough exam to go against, but at the same time, if you don't prepare well, it won't be easy. So when it comes to preparation, I believe there are 3 categories of people who prepare for this exam. The approach you choose will depend on your personality, what works for you, and some factors I will try to highlight. But the first category of people will be people who want to read wide, read textbooks, probably even look at the MRCS syllabus, try to cover all of it. Read base genuine textbooks like anatomy textbooks and atlases. You read Bailey and Love and surgical textbooks. You read very wide and wide and wide and wide. You may do 1 or 2 question banks, but very wide reading, as if you're consuming knowledge the way we did in medical school. So that's the first category of people, and if you're doing that, you probably need about 4 to 6 months to be able to get ready for the MRCS, and you also need to be very lucky for you to have covered enough, and also to remember enough that is very exam focused, because you may know enough, know a lot to be a great candidate, but for the exam your knowledge may not be streamlined enough. So there's some people prepare that way. I don't advise it, but it's one of the ways people prepare. Just read the base textbooks, the recommended textbooks. Then there's a second method, which is people memorize question banks and course materials. So this is a method that you probably can use 2 to 4 months to sort out, and it fits people who are very good with memorizing even without understanding concepts, and also if you're very short on time, that might be a great option for you. So it's an option that I also don't advise, because it might not turn out great in the exam if you are faced with some questions that are tricked a bit and this is not reflective of what you had memorized from the question banks and the course material, course resources you memorized. And then of course the third and my recommended approach will be what I call the hybrid approach, which is do a little bit of reading of textbooks, assuming that you are deficient in any of that area, and then go into full-scale revision using the question banks and course materials. So I say read a little bit of textbook, because depending on how you prepared for your part A, you should actually be adequately stuffed with information. after your MRCS Part A, that you can actually just do only revision for your Part B. So if your anatomy, for example, if it's not very strong, you may need to go back. And then, of course, I always recommend my best anatomy textbook, which is the Harold Ellis Clinical Oriented Anatomy for Junior Doctors. And you can also go to your atlases, Frank Nettas or Macmillan, any of the atlases you like. So, but that's assuming that you realize you're deficient in your knowledge base is not so strong or not fairly okay. But if you have a fair knowledge of the subjects, and by that I mean if you prepared well for your Part A and you are now doing your Part B very far from your Part A, I think that you can then go ahead to go into full-scale revision and practice, which is why I call it a hybrid approach. So some people say that Part A is very different from Part B. So, but that is because of how you need to prepare. But in terms of the knowledge, information you need, you come across a lot of it in Part A. It's just that in Part B, how you are required to reproduce it is different. You sit across a computer in Part A, and then you are able to recall passages you even read once you see the options, and you can get the answer. In Part B, there are no options, nothing to give you a clue. So you are expected to be able to remember on your own and actually to say it in a way that will give you the full mark. And then, of course, the clinical side is a complete different thing than its practice. So that is something that is a strong difference between Part A and Part B. So in that light, I would advise a hybrid approach. Check your knowledge base, see if you need to rush over some materials. But again, I'm talking about small textbooks that you can read fast and understand, and can give you exam focused information. And then you now go ahead to start full-scale revision using question banks and also using course resource materials, which I will list later. So the MRCS structure now itself, the Part A, is all what they call it, theory questions, single best answer for the whole 300 questions. But then the Part B, you have knowledge stations, and then you have skill stations. So the knowledge stations, you'll be asked questions, the same questions that you answered during relatively the same questions you answered during your Part A. You'll be asked, but you'll be required to verbalize your answers, okay? And then in the clinical or OSCE stations, you'll be required, of course, to perform clinical examinations or take histories, or even perform a procedure. So if you understand the structure of this exam, you can know what to expect. For example, you can know that you are supposed to expect 3 stations on examination. It won't be more, it won't be less, most likely. You can expect a certain number in history. For example, 3-2. You can expect a certain number in what do you call it now? Procedure, maybe whatever it is that they want you to do. So around 2, and so on and so forth. So it's a standard thing. You get to the website, you'll be able to download a structure of the exam, or you just ask people who are in a certain group with you preparing for the exam. You'll be able to see how many stations for each. It is standard, it remains that way, it really doesn't change. I think if it's going to change, they will let us know. But it doesn't change, which means that you can actually expect, know how to apportion your energy when you know what comes where. For example, that you need 3 clinical examination stations, and you have only 2 procedure stations, so you know how to apportion your energy in terms of preparation. But at the same time, every station matters. So it's why actually I'll prefer you look at it as a whole, even though you look at the individual numbers that come out. You look at it as a whole, that you need to pass every station because you really don't know what is going to make the difference for you. So let's talk about the materials you need. I've talked about the time range, and I think I should mention that for the hybrid approach, you can still do that within 2 to 4 months. I believe you can do that. It's more like I would recommend that a month to the exam, you focused more on revising course materials, revising course materials. So the materials available include question banks, textbooks. You can go to town. But when it comes to question banks, the popular and I think the most revered one is actually past the MRCS. Is the one that is closest to the actual examination. It can broaden your knowledge base quite well. I think the organization is quite alright. It's expensive anyway, but it's something that I think you can sacrifice for if you have the money for it. So that is past the MRCS. The MRCS has a very cheap one that I do not think will be so useful. But at the same time, if you don't have money for past the MRCS, of course you can do the MRCS, but it can be deceitful. It can make you think that you're ready, but you're not. That's the EMRCS. So if you're doing it, realize that it is way cheaper. The EMRCS Part B is way cheaper than the actual exam. Doesn't cover the scope adequately. Then past test, I believe, has some, and then there should be other question banks out there. So, but past the MRCS is the most relevant out of them. Then when it comes to course material, most of them have the same materials. So if you can lay hands on one, you're probably good to go, but you can get all of them so that you can cross-reference. They have different peculiarities per how they organize their courses, but the course material itself, the text they use, is usually just the same that they are recycling. So from Sala to Bazid to Talking Note, there's IMG MRCS OSCE now on Telegram. So those are courses I know of that they offer both online and live practice session before the exam for the Part B. Some of them will organize what they call hands-on for you, just few days to the exam in the UK or close to wherever you are doing your exam. And I'm mentioning course materials. If you register for the courses, then you get a course material, but some of them are accessible for free. So anyone you can lay hands on that is accessible for free, you can read for free. If you are booked for the course, I'm trying to emphasize that being in the course is not enough. You need to read the course material as thoroughly as those who probably I didn't book for the course, because it won't make so much difference if you don't study the material and just around and probably attending the sessions. The sessions are helpful, but you have to study the course materials yourself. So the course materials, the question banks, those are the resources that I want to mention. The textbooks are already known to everybody, and the almighty question usually is, should you do a course or not? Should you attend an online course? Should you attend a hands-on course? And I'll say it depends. If you have the money and you can comfortably book a course, I think you should do it. The reason is because the MRCS Part B exam, I think, is a confidence exam. It's easy, but you need to hold your nerves, and your ability to hold your nerves depends strongly on your confidence level and how much you believe that you are going to actually succeed on that day and in that moment, so that when something actually throws you off balance, you do not give up, you do not fold, as they say. So the courses can do something for you, in addition to actually having a set of people who are experienced that can show you the structure of the exam, tell you what to expect on the exam day, and also revise the exams with you. The fact that somebody has shown you the way, the fact that you are among a group of people preparing for the exam, can boost your confidence. So I think that's important. And if you don't understand the UK system and you've not been able to research on your own, the course guys have experience and they'll be able to tell you what that might be okay in your country, but you shouldn't try during the exam because it could just veto fail you. So that kind of thing is why the course is important. The exam is customer service, that's what I call it. You need to know your stuff, but after knowing your stuff, if you cannot be nice, if you cannot behave the way they behave here, the culture, then you may not be able to pass. And being nice means different things in different places, so these courses can help you, get a hang of what is required. But if you really don't have money for the course, if you can't afford it, if affording the course is stretch you thin, I do not think you should beat yourself up and think you will not pass. I didn't do a course myself because I couldn't afford it. I actually had very serious anxiety issues because of that. And what you do is you need to compensate for that with a lot of smart and hard work. Smart work in the sense that you need to actually ask yourself what truly matters in this exam, what materials matter, and then what is the actual structure of the exam. And then hard work, you need to practice. When I say practice, it might look generic, but I mean practice not just for the skill station, but the knowledge station all across. So if you can get a partner, do prepare for the exam. But if you can't, it's important that you get someone, whether it is a clinical or non-clinical person, who you can practice on. I was lucky myself, so my fiancé helped me throughout the process of the exam. So come back from work, I need to do examination, I need to any exam history, whatever it is. So I was doing that, and then eventually I was able to get someone who was preparing for the exam that I met in London. We met up in London a week to the exam, and then met for every day for 5 days, to practice. And I'll tell you this to wrap up the video, something that happened during this practice. So we come in and then we start. We do the examination as if we're in the exam scenario. Time ourselves. You come in, or you wash your hand, you greet, and all those things. So we do all of that, and by the 4th day, we were getting very good at doing clinical examination and taking history. You can just come in, and then the person tells you to do a random history, a random examination, and then you're doing it perfectly. So we were very happy with ourselves. Then we said, okay, since we're thinking we're pretty smart guys, we should be able to do well with the knowledge station. We had read that, that's not a problem. So we say, okay, let's just revise the knowledge station a bit. And how did you revise it? He takes the course materials and tries to ask me questions. And questions I know I can't actually verbalize them in a way that will make sense and earn me reasonable marks. It was a problem. So I was stammering. I was making sense, but not complete sense to earn good marks. And then I tried it on him, and the same thing happened to him, and we're in trouble. My exam was in 2-3 days. So we started rehearsing the knowledge station the same way too. As I call him, my friends, he was back in Nigeria then. Over the night, we have to stay awake. You ask me the questions, let me answer. And if I don't get it correctly, you correct me. So that way it sticks more, because if you go back to studying it, you can read it 10 times. You think you know it, but the way it is that if you have so much information in your brain, some of them will come to you easily. Some you will need clues to remember them, to recall them. So if it was an MCQ, a computer-based test, you'll be able to get it when you see options. But now this is theory. So one is that you don't have any clue to remind you. So you have to be able to remember them. Two is that there's a certain way they probably want you to say it, and say it fast so that you can get your marks and move on. So that is the kind of practice I'm talking about. You cannot belittle any part of the examination, but if you practice enough, on the day of the exam, it will still look like another practice for you. And my last advice is to know that no matter how well you prepare for the exam, no matter really how well you prepare, on that day you will miss some things. But if you prepared well, go through your knowledge part very, very well, go through your clinical examination and skills and everything very, very well, revise until everything is a revision for you, and you can do all of the examinations, all of the skill stations randomly without extra preparation. If you revise to that extent, you get to the exam, you will lose your nerve at some point. I did myself at 1 or 2 stations. At some point I forget something when I'm just about presenting the patient, and I have to go back and ask the patient, oh, what is, So, but the point is, you have to hold your nerve, and no matter the mistakes you make, and no matter how the exam goes on that day, if you really did prepare well and you can hold your own ground, and when you make a mistake, you try to correct it instead of making it worse or getting sadder and carrying it over to the next station. And if you can't get it better, forget it and move to the next station. If you do all of those things, you'll be fine, because there's nobody that will go for that exam and do 100% accurately. So you will rarely see that. So but people will score high, people will score low, but what's important is that you pass the exam. That's also why how you read is important, because if you study all the dense materials, you're very knowledgeable, and you have difficulty passing the exam, you won't be happy with yourself. People who probably didn't study as hard will pass, because they were smart about the technique they use, and they were smart about their revision strategy. So this is what I have to say about the MRCS Part B, and you can ask me questions down in the comments segment, and I hope you have a nice exam and success in it also. Thank you. Bye.